We know that quantity demanded and price are inversely related, but price is not the only thing that will impact the quantity that consumers will be willing and able to buy. These non-price characteristics that influence demand are called determinants of demand. They are also sometimes called demand shifters because they shift the entire demand curve to the left or the right. When a determinant changes and we hold everything else constant, the quantity demanded changes even if the price does not. For example, as more charging stations are created for electric cars, consumers will feel more comfortable using them. Therefore, even if the price of a Chevy Bolt, about $36,600, stays the same, a higher quantity will be demanded, 1,600 units to 1,760. This moves that point on the original demand curve to the right. It is about the same price, but a higher quantity. This would be true even if the price started higher at, say, $38,200. The quantity demanded at that price increases from 1,500 to 1,650, even when the price stays the same. I'd like you to pause the video here and see if you can list at least 4 things that would cause demand for a common service, such as a haircut, to either increase or decrease, even if the price of that haircut did not change. Hopefully, 1 or 2 items came to mind quickly. Were you able to think of 4 or more? Here is a sample list. Maybe there's a new popular style, so a bunch of people need to go get the new style. This would cause the demand curve to shift to the right as demand increases. If the population is growing, there are more people that need haircuts. This would also cause the demand curve to shift right. A product was released on the market that lets parents cut their children's hair easily at home. This would shift the demand curve to the left. If a new trend is to have neatly trimmed hair, that would mean people would get haircuts more often, which would shift the demand curve to the right. Lastly, if it's the week of school pictures, a bunch of students will get a haircut and demand will shift right. It can help to think about some broad common categories of determinants of demand. Probably one of the most common change is to consumer preferences. Remember, an important part of how consumers decide to spend their money is the indifference curve and that optimal bundle. Well, the indifference curve encapsulates the consumer's preferences. As the preferences change, so will the optimal bundle. Preferences can cause either a negative or a positive impact on demand, shifting it to the left or right, respectively. For example, many people are concerned about the environment, and that means their preferences will shift toward environmentally friendly goods and services, shifting demand right, and away from detrimental ones, shifting demand to the left. Or, if there's a new trend, consumers will want to spend more money on the popular item. When we talked about demand and how we go from the individual to the market, we added up all of the individual consumers' demand. If the population is growing, there'll be more consumers in the market, and this will generally shift demand to the right. If the population is decreasing, this will shift demand to the left. Population change is one major reason for the market size to grow. But we also can see things like government intervention by, say, requiring a product to increase the number of consumers. For example, some states require all children under a certain weight to be in a car seat. When this law was passed, it would have increased the number of consumers in the market for a car seat, shifting the demand curve to the right. It's also possible for markets to shrink, shifting demand to the left. Also, in my list was the release of a new hair cutting kit for home use. We can generalize this idea by saying that there are some products that are substitutes. When there's a new substitute, or the price of an existing substitute decreases, then some people will find the substitute a better value, and some will not. This will cause the demand curve to shift left. Again, going back to our consumer choice model, the optimal bundle was the combination of goods that maximized total utility, but subject to a budget constraint. That budget constraint can move if the price of a good changes. And we talked about that in the lessons on the income and substitution effects as part of the reason why the demand curve is downward sloping. The budget constraint can also change if the income of the individual changes. This will move the entire budget constraint closer to the origin if income decreases, or further away if the income increases. This would then change the optimal bundle, which would shift the demand curve. Note that this change happens even if prices are held constant, so we're talking about a point on a different demand curve. In general, if income increases, consumers will buy more goods and services. This extra spending will usually be spread across a variety of goods, depending upon the size of the increase. This would then be associated with a shift right in the demand curve, whereas a decrease in income will generally lead to a shift left in the demand curve. One big determinant that is often overlooked is that of consumer expectations. An expectation is what we think will happen in the future. It's not happened yet and might not happen. Consumers will often take expectations into account when making purchase decisions. If a person expects the winter to be especially cold, then they'll buy warmer clothing before it gets cold. In expectation of graduating, many college seniors will start job searching, or parents will book hotel rooms or rent a venue for a party. Expectations can be very powerful determinants that can sometimes counteract or magnify the impact of other determinants. For example, if consumers are worried about their job security, they will often build up savings, even though they have a job, they have money, and they have products that they would like to buy. When we talk about the market equilibrium, we'll see how a price cut could possibly lead to a lower quantity demanded when expectations are negative. Here, we want to focus on only the determinant changing, and in this case, that means demand could shift left or right, depending upon how those expectations are changing. Now, we've discussed two broad types of changes to demand: a price change that will move demand to a different point on the same demand curve, often referred to as a change in the quantity demanded, and a determinant of demand, something that, other than price, shifts the entire demand curve, often referred to as a shift in demand.